Individualism and collectivism are among the most common political ideologies, and posing them as enemies is just as common. This dichotomy is expressed in a multitude of ways.
The heroic and unique individual fighting off the common and bland masses to carve out a new path that they can claim as their own.
Or the revolutionary who sings to the masses. They must fight against the establishment as a collective and share a oneness in victory. Of course, these are simplistic portrayals of either side, but they do express a common theme in trying to define these terms. Individualism, independent self-reliance, usually in opposition to a uniformity being imposed on by a mass of people. Collectivism, a shared identity formed against a common enemy. Both tend to signify a search for identity or maintenance of it, either through oneself or through a group. Fascists are the easiest example of brute and vulgar collectivism that is mystified and expressed not through thought, but of action. That's why fascism is often called the cult of action for action's sake. Capitalism is the easiest example of brute and vulgar individualism, the pioneer who must slash the throat of opposition and claim massive amounts of wealth in doing so, creating the tallest tower of gold,
while those below suffer from their lack of unique ingenuity.
Although, both of these ideologies, in effect, care very little for these values. The centralizing power of a totalitarian's hand gives no sympathy towards the masses other than using them as a tool to maintain and expand power. The tyrant's collectivism is merely subordination to an individual's power under the veneer of brotherhood. You are not a collective in the sense of a collection of individuals, merely one of many servants chained by centralized power. Let's really think about this. When a grouping of individuals centralizes power under one person, we no longer act as a group. We are acting under the power of another. This collective is merely a formality. It's a part of a theatrical play. Yes, you are part of a brotherhood where you and your brothers are equal, except, of course, the man on the throne, who conveniently you need, who without him you are nothing. No, this is not collectivism. This is not a group of individuals. This is an act being performed, and you are the puppet, and he is the puppet master pulling the strings. The domination may not even be as blatant as a man on a throne, but more abstract, such as rigid uniformity to a social hierarchy, such as race or gender, in which these identities are essentialized as the supernatural essence that seeks to reinforce a tie between you and the rest of the group, invoking a suffocating purity in which any dissent or difference is harshly punished. Reactionary ideology in general invokes this dynamic, a goal towards stasis against progress, to find a fixed community of homogeneity, a socio-monoculture of sorts. This is done to prevent the ability to break away and reform into new collectives, as this can introduce a transparency of information and materials as they are spread across multiple expanding networks, in which people cooperate in one group to then break away and cooperate in other groups, spreading materials and building a highly complex network of mutual aid. This type of rhizomatic distribution is hard to control when you are constantly trying to maintain your own consolidated power that formed from information and material scarcity. Now, let's talk about the capitalist individualism. The same individualism in which masses of people toil every day with less and less in their pockets, while the owner gains more and more. This same individualism in which only a few individuals are free, while the rest are doomed to nothing more than slavery. When you centralize power through capital accumulation, you are not creating individual freedom. Rather, you are taking it away. No amount of bootstrap pulling can undo systemic damage. The effects of intergenerational wealth hoarding and legal manipulation create a sick game of chasing ever-fleeting cheese. When your choice is between wage labor or death, the number of available options has been severely reduced. Your choices are purposely narrowed to conform to the monopolized system. Simply put, the recognition that social liberty is inherently bound up with material liberty is exactly why the concentration of wealth hoarding and the resulting power from that is so damaging to our ability to express ourselves freely. Any individualism that seeks to undermine the individual freedoms of others is simply a tyrant like no other, who, like the collectivist tyrant, you can just be like if you only work hard and play along. It's funny, the capitalist paints communism as breadlines and boring lives, and yet his world is no different. It's as if individualism and collectivism are cheap lines used by centralized authorities to convince masses of people that they belong if only they just went along, creating identities for you to fulfill while your development is left desolate, a body used but a mind left still. Being doesn't care for this dichotomy, not one bit. The collective is only as free as the individual in it. The individual is only as free as the collectives formed, as free association means free disassociation. This means a world of coexistence between individual autonomy and group activity, constantly and fluidly shifting between one another in beautiful complexity.